June 28, 2025, a date every business in Europe fears.
But there's a game changer: AI. From real-time translations to smart navigation, it's turning barriers into...
Compliance isn't just avoiding fines, it's unlocking a massive market. Here's the 6-step playbook to lead the inclusive future.
There's a date fast approaching on the European calendar that, well, every business operating in the EU really needs to know. June 28th, 2025. It's not just another day on the calendar. It actually marks a pretty significant shift in how we think about digital access, inclusion. So today we're going to dive deep into the European Accessibility Act, or EA. We'll look at why it's so important, what it actually demands, and also how artificial intelligence, AI, is shaping up to be both this really powerful solution, but maybe also a complex challenge in meeting these new standards. Our mission really is to give you a shortcut to understanding the stakes, the opportunities, and the future of a truly accessible digital world.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. The European Accessibility Act, the EAA, it's not just another regulation popping up, is it? It's a directive specifically designed to kind of knit together a more unified and definitely more inclusive digital marketplace right across the EU.
Exactly. Its main purpose is really to smooth out how accessible products and services work across borders. Getting rid of those barriers caused by all the different national rules that used to exist. And there's a sort of dual benefit here, right?
Absolutely. For businesses, it means, common rules. That simplifies things hugely. Should mean reduced costs, easier cross-border trading, and just more market opportunities overall.
Okay.
And then for individuals with disabilities, and older people too, it promises more accessible products, hopefully at more competitive prices, and fewer barriers to really critical services, things like transport, education, getting a job.
And the impact is quite direct, isn't it? I mean, if you're a private company selling basically anything into the... Even if your main office is, say, in the UK or the US, you have to comply. You're on the hook.
That's the key takeaway. It's about where your customers are, not just where your headquarters is located. And if we put this in a slightly broader context, the EAA is actually a really monumental step. It's about fulfilling obligations under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
The UNCRPD?
Exactly. And that convention, it's quite clear. It defines persons with disabilities as those with long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments. Which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society.
And the scale we're talking about here it's huge.
It really is. We're talking about an estimated 135 million people just within the EU affected by disability in some way.
Wow.
So this isn't some niche group, it's a massive segment of the population.
Yeah.
There's that quote, "Waiting until the last minute isn't a strategy, it's a gamble." And I think that really hammers home the urgency here. Companies need to be acting now. It's not just about ticking a box for compliance.
No, it sounds like a strategic imperative, really. So, okay, what does this mean in practice then?
Yeah.
What specific products and services are actually covered? Because it sounds like it's pretty wide-ranging.
It is definitely more expansive than you might first think. So on the product side, you've got everyday things like computers and operating systems, then ATMs, those ticketing and check-in machines you see everywhere.
Right? Airports, train stations.
Exactly. Smartphones, obviously, TV equipment related to digital TV services, and e-readers too.
Okay, so quite a bit of hardware.
Yes, but it extends really significantly into services as well. Things like telephony services and the equipment that goes with them, access to audiovisual media services. So think streaming platforms, that kind of thing.
Netflix, Disney Plus pack, yeah.
Banking services, e-commerce websites, and e-books are explicitly mentioned too.
And transport.
And transport, yes.
Yeah.
Passenger transport services, air, bus, rail, waterborne. There's a little nuance there, though. Urban, suburban, and regional transport have slightly different compliance timelines or requirements acknowledging, their operational complexities.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
So the natural next question is, what does accessible actually look like for all these different things?
Yeah, because it's not just about websites, is it?
Not at all. The EAA is pushing way beyond just basic website compliance. It's about taking a full spectrum view of accessibility, really embedding inclusive design throughout all the phases of product development and service delivery from the very start.
Okay, so give me an example. Like for communications.
Sure. For electronic communications, accessibility means supporting real-time text alongside voice and facilitating what they call total conversation, where you have video and it synchronizes the voice, the text, and the video all together.
Wow.
And that standard crucially applies even to emergency communications, like calling the 1 to 12 number across Europe.
That's vital. And what about, say, those self-service machines?
Well, imagine instructions being available not just visually, but also in voice, or using text or images for users who are deaf, or ensuring options are crystal clear for people with color blindness. So, putting written labels on green or red buttons, not just relying on the color itself.
Simple things, but they make a huge difference.
Exactly. And take ebooks. It's not enough just to have the digital text. Underlying code, the technical stuff has to allow screen readers to easily access the index, navigate between chapters, and importantly, ensure that any technical protections like DRM don't accidentally block assistive devices from reading the text aloud. It's about building in that flexibility.
And this whole approach, it's guided by some key principles, isn't it?
Yes, there are 4 core principles that really underpin the whole act. You might have heard of them from web accessibility contexts, like WCAG. First is perceivability. Can users perceive the information visually, audibly, maybe tactilely?
Okay.
Second, operability. Can users actually operate the interface and navigate,
Yeah,
regardless of how they interact, keyboard, a mouse, voice switch device?
makes sense. Yeah.
Third, understandability. Is the information and the operation of the user interface clear, intuitive, easy to grasp?
Right.
And finally, robustness. Can the content be interpreted reliably by a wide variety of user agents, including all sorts of current and future assistive technologies?
Perceivable, operable, understandable, robust, POUR.
That's the acronym, yeah. It's a really holistic framework covering all the bases.
So this full spectrum view you mentioned, it really means looking at everything, doesn't it?
It does, from the initial hardware design sketches right through to how customer service is delivered and ensuring that accessible experience is consistent, whether someone's using a laptop, a phone, or interacting in person. It's about designing these accessible user journeys across digital and real-world touchpoints.
Can you give another example of what that might look like?
Sure. Think about simple features like allowing users to easily enlarge text on a screen, or zoom in on small icons or pictograms.
Yeah.
Or maybe instantly increasing the contrast for someone with a visual impairment, or consider providing a written error message when a computer just makes an audio beep. That audio cue is useless for a deaf user, right?
Absolutely.
So it's really about designing with flexibility and multiple ways of interacting built in from the start, not as an afterthought.
Given the sheer scope of all this, it sounds like a massive undertaking for organizations.
It is.
And the reality seems to be that many just aren't ready. You have to wonder, how accessible are things right now, really?
Well, the data isn't great, unfortunately. There was an alarming survey by WebAIM. They looked at the home pages of the top 1 million websites.
Okay.
Get this, 95.9% had identifiable WCAG violations.
Wow, 95.9%. That's nearly all of them.
Almost all. And WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, that's kind of the global gold standard. On average, these home pages had about 56, almost 57 errors per page.
Goodness.
And a huge chunk, 81%, were affected by low contrast text, which is often one of the easier things to fix, ironically.
So it's not just complex coding issues.
Not always. It often points to a deeper issue, maybe a cultural blind spot in the design and development process. It suggests accessibility isn't being prioritized from day one.
Right? It needs a fundamental shift, not just a technical patch.
Exactly. And this lack of readiness, it's having real consequences. Accessibility.com reported over 2,200 website accessibility lawsuits filed just in 2023.
2,200?
Yeah. And maybe more concerning, about a quarter of those, 26%, were against repeat offenders.
So companies aren't necessarily learning the lesson the first time.
It seems not always. It shows noncompliance isn't just a theoretical risk. It's leading to actual legal action. And what's really fascinating here is that the challenges companies face aren't purely technical. It's not just about coding. Often there's a lack of clarity or uncertainty about how the rules apply, or just a lack of resources.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Look at scholarly publishers like Duke University Press. They've talked openly about navigating uncertainties, like, do academic journals definitely fall under the EAA? And then there's the immense challenge of making, say, 5,000 older backlist titles compliant.
Yeah, that sounds daunting.
It is. So they adopted a kind of risk mitigation strategy, focusing on fixing their top-selling backlist titles first. It's pragmatic.
Okay, now I heard there's a sort of get out clause, a disproportionate burden clause.
There is, yes. Companies can claim an exemption if they can genuinely prove that compliance would pose an excessive financial or organizational burden. And this is a B, but the Act is very explicit. Things like lack of priority, time, or knowledge are not considered legitimate reasons for exemption.
So you can't just say, we didn't know, or we were too busy.
Exactly, that won't fly. There is, however, an important exemption for micro enterprises, really small businesses that provide services. They're exempt from the formal assessment requirement, which helps a bit.
Okay, that's good to know for the smaller players.
But for everyone else who doesn't meet the exemption criteria, the consequences for non-compliance can be pretty severe.
Like, what? Fines?
Oh, yeah. Say, significant fines are definitely on the table. But it can go further. Potential confiscation of property, suspension of business licenses, even community service has been mentioned in some transpositions of law.
Really? Community service?
Yeah. In France, for instance, non-compliance is treated as a Class 5 offense, which is serious, and they have specific fines laid out. For larger businesses, say those with 250 million or more annual turnover, it's a €50,000 fine for web accessibility non-compliance.
50,000 euros?
Plus another potential 25,000 if they fail to publish their accessibility statement.
Wow. Okay, so these aren't just token fines, they have real teeth.
Definitely. They're designed to compel action and really underscore how seriously the EU is taking this.
But, okay, it's not all doom and gloom, deadlines and penalties. There's another side to this, isn't there? An opportunity side?
Absolutely.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. AI, artificial intelligence, seems to be emerging as a real game changer here, a genuine bearer of hope in the accessibility landscape.
That's a great way to put it. AI's potential is immense, particularly in areas like transcription, and especially live transcription. Think about real-time subtitles for people who are deaf or hard of hearing at live events, lectures, even just team meetings.
That would be incredible.
And what's more, AI can dramatically reduce the cost and the sheer effort involved in doing that manually. It makes these solutions much more scalable and affordable than they ever used to be.
So it democratizes access to those tools.
In a way, yes.
So how is AI actually doing this? What's the tech behind it? And are there limits?
Well, essentially, AI achieves this through really advanced pattern recognition and language understanding. It uses sophisticated machine learning models, often deep learning neural networks. These models learn from absolutely vast amounts of data, audio, text, images.
Okay.
They learn to recognize speech patterns, translate text in real time, and adapt to all sorts of different auditory and visual inputs. The level of nuance is getting quite impressive.
And we're seeing some pretty innovative uses already, right?
Oh, definitely. AI is being deployed in some amazing ways, things like artificial vision systems to help people navigate their surroundings. Virtual assistants are becoming more capable. There are real-time fire warning systems being developed that use different cues.
Tactile gloves?
Yeah, tactile gloves that can help users perceive their environment through touch. Accessible bus rides, systems that help people cross the road at traffic signals by adapting to their individual needs.
That's fantastic.
And you mentioned this earlier, it can even be used to predict teaching methodologies that might be most suitable for students with dyslexia. That's a really powerful application of its learning ability.
That really is incredible, predicting learning methods. But, I mean, something this powerful, it must come with its own set of caveats, right? Considerations.
Absolutely. You're right to ask. While AI offers this incredible promise, it absolutely presents its own set of challenges that we have to address very, very carefully.
Such as?
Well, crucially, there's a significant risk of bias. If the AI algorithms are trained on data that is itself biased or incomplete, they could inadvertently just perpetuate existing inequalities and exclusion. They might completely neglect the needs of certain disability groups.
So the training data is key.
Hugely important, and for example, a lot of the current research focus in AI for accessibility has been primarily on visual impairment, which is great, but it does point to a potential gap in how well we're addressing the needs of people with other types of disabilities.
Okay, so bias is one thing. What else?
Well, other challenges include just fundamental data quality concerns beyond bias. There are real-world technical implementation hurdles, operational difficulties in actually integrating these AI systems smoothly, persistent knowledge and awareness gaps, people not knowing what's possible or how to use it effectively.
Right.
And of course, as with any powerful data-driven technology, we always have to think about security and privacy concerns, including the potential for increased surveillance. So yes, AI is definitely a bearer of hope, but we absolutely have to proceed with caution, with awareness, and with a really deep commitment to ethical development and deployment.
Okay, so if you're listening to this, maybe you're a business leader or perhaps just someone curious about navigating this whole evolving landscape. What's the practical roadmap? How do you not just comply with the EAA, but actually lead the way in creating an inclusive digital future?
Well, we can break it down into some key steps, sort of a practical checklist. First up is audit. You need to know where you stand. Start with automated accessibility scans. They're a good first pass.
But not enough on their own?
Definitely not. You absolutely need to follow up with manual audits, often involving experts and ideally users with disabilities. Automated tools just miss too much nuance.
Okay, so audit first, then
remediate. Once the audit identifies the problems, you need a systematic plan to fix them.
makes sense. Step 3?
Statement. You need to publish a clear, honest, and comprehensive accessibility statement. This should clearly outline your level of compliance in your ongoing effort.
True. Transparency is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fourth, and this is crucial and ongoing, educate and train. You need continuous training for everyone involved, developers, designers, content creators, even your customer support teams. Everyone needs to understand inclusive design principles.
It has to be embedded in the culture.
Exactly. Fifth step, test with users. You cannot beat engaging real users with a diverse range of disabilities to validate that your products and services are genuinely accessible and usable in the real world.
Get that real-world feedback.
Essential. And finally, step 6, monitor and document. Accessibility isn't a one-time fix. It's an ongoing process. You need to continuously monitor accessibility as your services change and evolve and make sure that all your documentation, including those transparency reports, is itself accessible.
So, really connecting this back to the bigger picture, true accessibility isn't just a project you complete, is it?
Not at all. It's an ongoing commitment, a continuous improvement cycle. It's fundamentally about building universally designed experiences right from the very beginning, from the ground up, rather than constantly trying to retrofit fixes or patch things up after they've already been built.
And taking that proactive strategic approach, it does more than just tick a legal box.
Oh, absolutely. It helps businesses avoid those significant fines we talked about. It definitely mitigates reputational risk. And crucially, it opens up their products and services to that huge market segment, those 135 million people in the EU alone. It expands their customer reach dramatically.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's about genuinely fulfilling a commitment to inclusion, which is increasingly what customers and employees expect.
So the European Accessibility Act, especially when you amplify it with the incredible potential of AI, it really feels like it's reshaping our digital world and maybe even our physical world too, pushing us towards a genuinely more inclusive society. It's clearly not just a legal hurdle for businesses to jump over. It feels much more like a strategic imperative one with a really profound benefits for everyone.
I agree, it's a fundamental shift. So thinking about everything we've dived into today, what really stands out to you about all this? And maybe as we look towards that 2025 deadline and beyond, here's a thought to leave you with. How will our collective commitment to accessibility, driven now by legislation like the EAA and increasingly enhanced by technologies like AI, how will that actually redefine our very concept of belonging and participation in this increasingly digital world we all live in?